In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to use the charcoal Photoshop action. So this is a stock photo I'll use in the video tutorial, and I'll put this guy down, a link to this photo down in the description below, so if you want to download that and follow along you can. So this is the effects that the action creates. You actually get to choose between 5 different styles. So when you load up the action, there'll be 5 different options you can use. This was, I think, option 1, and I played around with the layers a little bit, and I'll show you, how to customize the look of the effect when the action's finished, because there's a lot of flexibility. So this is another style, just played around with that one a bit. That's another style. So they all use slightly different charcoal strokes to help build up the effect. And this one here, I'll show you how to color the strokes all individually, because they're all on different layers. We can easily color them. And I'll just click through a few more examples of the effect. So that there demonstrates 2 different styles. And I'll just create some room here. Where was I? 7A. Alright, let's get into it. I'll close these all down. Okay, so I'm just going to run through how to set up your Photoshop file now, and things to look out for, just so that you don't run into any errors when playing back the action. So firstly, your photo layer here in the layer panel needs to look identical to this. It should say background and have that lock symbol. Okay, so if it doesn't, so I'll just delete that. So if you open up your photo and it doesn't say background and have that lock symbol, just go to Layer, New, Background from Layer, and that will just set it as the background. Okay, so you only need to do that step if you open up your photo and it doesn't look identical to that. Okay, so still in the layer panel, I'm just going to go to this top right hand corner icon, go to panel options, and right down the bottom here, go to make sure add copy to copy layers and groups is selected. I'm going to click OK. Next, go to image mode and make sure you're in RGB color mode and 8 bits of channel is selected. Go to image size. Make sure you're using a high resolution photo for this action, or any one of my Photoshop actions. So you can see the size of mine there, 2200 by 2800. Good range for this action is anywhere between, say, 1500 to 4000 pixels. So yeah, try to avoid using low resolution photos for any of my effects. I'm going to cancel that. So now what I need to do is create a new layer, and I'm going to call it brush. So I'm going to hit Control Shift N or Command Shift N, and I'm just going to call this brush, all in lowercase. Okay, click OK. And so the idea is, with the brush layer selected, we just want to trace around the subject in our photo, or you can use a brush and brush over subject of your photo, and that's where that's where the action is going to apply all the effects to. So I'm just going to do a really bad job here. I'm just going to grab my magnetic lasso tool, and I'm just going to quickly draw around the edges, trace around the edges of my subject here. Whoops. You don't need to be too accurate. It's probably actually better if you leave it just a little bit messy, so I'm just going to go down here. Okay, so you can see that's created a selection, and so what I want to do now with that selection is fill that area. So with my brush layer selected, if I just hold down Alt and hit delete, or Option delete, it's going to fill this area with my foreground color here, which is black. So you can do that, or another way to do it, you can go Shift delete, and you can select the foreground color here, or a color, I can say black. Doesn't matter what color you fill it. So there I have my brush layer. I've traced around my subject. What I might also do is just soften up the bottom here. So if I just hit E, I'll get eraser tool out, and I'm just going to brush that away. What I might actually do, I might brush a little bit more black in down here. Something like that, that'll do. Okay, so what we need to do now is load up our brushes that were included in the download and load up the actions panel. So firstly, we'll load up the brushes. So to do that, I'm just going to hit B on the keyboard. I'm going to right click anywhere over the canvas here. I'm going to select this little icon and go to replace brushes. And I'm just going to select the charcoal brushes.abr. It's included in the download. And you'll see all the charcoal brushes will appear in your brush panel now. Okay, so that's all set up. Now when you load up your brushes, a very important step to remember each time you run the action is just to ensure that the opacity of your brush is at 100%. So if you just hit B on the keyboard to get your brush out, just go up to the top here and make sure it's at 100%. Sometimes if you run the action and you get a strange error, you might notice that if you get your brush tool out that your opacity is really low, like 20, 30, 40, 50%, somewhere around there. So always make sure it's at 100%. Okay, next we need to load up the actions panel. So go to Window, Actions, and it'll pop up to the side here. Go up to this top right hand corner icon and go to Load Actions. Select charcoal.atn and it'll pop up here. And you notice if you twirl open the folder, all 5 styles are here. Now I've included just a small JPEG in the download which shows you which each individual style looks like, just for your reference. But for this example, I'm just going to play style 2. Okay, now the action takes anywhere between a minute to 2 minutes to download, so to play back. It really depends on the size of your photo and like the speed of your computer. So I'm just going to play now, and I'm going to fast forward the video and get to the result. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to go through each individual layer and talk about how it affects the design and how we can make some customizations. Alright, so the action's finished playing back, and this is the result that I got. So I'm going to minimize this. And another thing to remember, there are 5 styles included here. So firstly, experiment with each one of those, and secondly, every time you run the action, you're going to get a completely different result because the variation of all these charcoal strokes will be randomized every time. So if you want to play, say, style 2 several times to see what combinations you come up with, you can definitely do that. So I'm going to minimize the actions panel and let's go into the layer panel now. So I'm just going to do a quick way to collapse all these folders. Well, there's not too many in this action, but just for reference, if you hold down Control Alt or Command Option on Mac, and with this charcoal style 2 folder selected, just click on the arrow and that just collapses the folders inside it, so things are a bit neater. Alright, so up the top here, I've just left the brush layer on, so if you want to run the action again, just simply shift select these 2 layers and you can now run the action again. I'll undo that. Okay, and you can see what the action does. It fills in our main area with all the effects, but it also extends out a little bit, so just keep that in mind as well. Okay, so go inside. What I'll start off by doing is jumping straight into how I like to customize the results. I'll end up talking about what each individual layer does, but firstly I'm just going to tell you what I like to do straight away. So the action's finished playing back, and the very first thing I like to do is go to this layer here. It's called Reveal Normal Photo, and I've got in brackets Brush Mask. Because looking at this design here, I want to clear up some areas. Like I want his face to appear much more prominent. So that's what I like to do first. So if I just hit B, get the brush out, and if I right click, I've included just a soft brush up the top left hand corner here. Okay, so just select that, and if you select this mask, anywhere, if you brush white into that mask, it will reveal the layer, black will hide it. So currently it's completely hidden. So if I hold down Shift and just click on the mask, that temporarily disables it. So you see that big red X to it. So you can see what that layer is there. All it is a copy of our cutout. It's put there, it's black and white. It's affected by some of these adjustment layers above it, so it's got a bit of a stylized look to it. But if you grab a white brush now, and if I brush into that mask, I can reveal that photo, that part, the original look of our photo there. So it's great for, if you're using this action on people as your subjects and you want to clear up their face or anywhere, like I could just like brush into his shoulder here, clear that part up. And what I like to do secondly is, I've brushed 100% into that mask, so it's really gone back to the original state of that layer there. So if I now just click and hold that word opacity up the top here, if I click, hold and drag to the left and right, that's, if I bring it to the left, that's 0%, that's 100%. So I might not want it at 100%, so I can just click and drag and just bring it down a little bit. And so it starts to blend down onto the textures, these bottom layers here. So that's without it, that's with it. So you can see it just makes a dramatic difference and really helps identify some focal points in our design. So that's a very important step. And this layer here, texture overlay, this just adds a little bit of texture over that area. So if I just move that around there, you can see that. So it helps just helps to achieve that, that charcoal look, adds a bit of texture over our face, subject's face there. So that's that. So that's a very important layer. Jump to that one first and identify your focal points, brush into the mask, and lower the opacity down to help it blend more with the textures below. Okay, so what we'll do now, we'll go back up to the top here. So use original color. If you tick this one on, you'll see it just overlays the original color of our photo. If you tick this one on, use original color, use original photo color blurred. It just adds the original color, but actually it blurs it out a bit more, so it bleeds a little bit into the outside textures. Okay, so going on down this layer here, overall brightness. If you double click on this, you can play around with these handles here, and that will affect the brightness and contrast of the design, of the overall design. So if you want it to be a little bit darker, you drag this handle in here, just like that. So I actually prefer this design a little bit darker, so I'm just going to bring that down to there. Okay, contrast in brackets opacity. So what you can do here is this layer's opacity is currently 0%. So if you just click and hold, drag on that word opacity, bring it to 100%. See that there? So I'm doing that, 0 to 100. So it's just adding a bit of contrast. So you can start at 0, slowly drag to the right, and I've added 30% contrast there. Overall toning, you probably don't need to play around with this one too much. If I turn it on and off, it's basically where I set the main contrast of the design, but you can play around with the layer of this opacity layer, or you can double click on this and play around with each one of these anchor points here. Okay, so going on down, we've got this folder here called photo layering. So what I'll do, if I turn it on and off, actually I'll turn this one off for a moment. If I turn this off, you'll see it's basically removed our photo. And all you can see now is just the textures that sort of surround the area, our brushed area. So these layers here, this folder here, brings in our original subject. And if you go inside, there are 3 different layers here. Photo layer 1, 2 and 3. And each one sort of affects the design in a different way. So if I turn them all off, I'll turn on the bottom one, you can see it's just subtly brought it in. The next one, much more prominent, and the top one just adds a little bit more, and they all appear in different color ranges in the design. So one of these layers, can't remember which one, will affect the darker tones, the other one will appear in lighter tones. So it's good to, what I like to do is jump into this folder and just switch them on and off and take a look around the design with them off and see if it looks any better, firstly. But secondly, I'll turn this one back on. I'll jump into this folder and I'll turn that one off and I'll look around the design and ask myself, does any particular area of this design look better with that layer turned off? And I might say, oh yeah, down around here, your shoulders looks good with it off. So what I'll do, I'll just select the mask. Okay, So if I just hold down Alt or Option and click into that mask, you can see that's the area where this layer is restricted to. All the areas in white, all the areas in black, it won't appear. So it appears in really unusual areas. And so what I can do now, I can grab my black brush because I wanted to hide some of this effect. So I'll just grab black brush and a brush into that mask. You know, I can brush that away down along your shoulders, and I'll just do the same with all these. Turn that off. Does anywhere look really cool with it off? Does the whole thing look better with it off? You know, I think it looks pretty good with it all on. So I'm going to leave it on. This one here, might do the same. I'll brush black around here. And what you can also do is, you know, use the mask on the photo layering folder. So if I turn the folder on and off, you see it hides all our subjects. So, you know, I can just select this mask, grab a black brush again, I can brush away in here. So you've really got a heap of control over, you know, what areas of the design you want to appear most prominent, like his face, and, you know, where you want it to taper off into, you know, all these charcoal strokes, and get really abstract, you know, really technical with, yeah, how you want elements to appear. So that's really cool. So this one here, dark and black tones, you probably don't need to use that too much, but this layer here basically will attack the darkest tones in the design and make them a little bit darker. So that there. I just like to flick it on and off and see if it looks better with it on or off. Just leave it off for this case. Okay. So these folders here, sketch lines 1 and 2, if I turn them both off, you see that basically does all the work. You don't need to use both the folders. We'll go inside. Actually, I'll twirl them both open. So you can see in sketch lines, there are 3 different layers. Again, they work in a similar way to the photo layering folder. Well, what I like to do is just flick them on and off. Check out which ones they are. You know, you can move them around as well. You don't just have to leave them in position. Move them wherever. So I think they all look pretty good with them on. And what I'd also like to quickly do is select a layer, and if you want to make it more prominent, make it appear much bolder. So for example, this layer here is, you know, it's not as strong. So if I hold down Alt or Option, click, hold and drag down in layer order, it basically creates a duplicate. Or you can just hit Control J, Command J, and that will duplicate the layer. You can duplicate the entire folder, Control J, that'll make everything appear much more prominent. That looks pretty cool. So, and you know, I'll drag this folder's opacity from 100, bring it to 0. You know, and I'll just use a little bit of that, so 45%. So like that, so it's just up the boldness and intensity of all the lines. Sketch lines 2. You can see if I turn that off, that looks pretty cool. It's created some gaps in the design, which is pretty sweet. So you can get an idea that, you know, if I didn't have this, if we didn't have this layer here, reveal normal photo, it looked like a bit of a mess, but because we can identify the focal points in our design, it comes out as a really cool abstract looking sort of charcoal sketch, which is, you know, really sweet. So yeah, turn these folders on and off. Ask yourself if it looks better with it on and off, or you could go into these individual layers and turn them on and off. I think I'll leave that like that. I might turn the one off. And, you know, for some of these layers I've just created an adjustment layer where you can play around with the brightness of that. So I can double click on that and play around with these handles here. Very subtle, but you can fine tune the brightness of those. Okay, so let's compare this against the original. I'll turn those 2 off. So you can see a massive difference there. All I'm really doing is just playing around with the layers. Now, what I'm going to do now is show you how to color some of these layers. It's really simple. So I'll just turn this one off for the moment, and I'll go inside sketch lines. So So you can see we've got our layers here, and if I wanted to colour them, all you need to do is double click on the layer and select colour overlay, and you can just click on this red box and straight away just pick different colours, which is really cool. Do it with this one, colour overlay. Looks pretty cool. So you get the point. Another way you can do it is if I just go down to the bottom here and select solid colour. I should just be able to pick a colour, and if I hold down Alt or Option and move my mouse in between the colour fill layer and the layer below, you see that little white box with the arrow, so it's going to clip it to that layer below. So that way this red solid colour will only affect the pixels in this layer. So you just double click in this box and change the colour that way. I could drag, hold down Alt or Option, drag and copy down, hold down Alt or Option, click between those layers, and then choose another colour. So that top one does most of the work anyway. Okay, so that is that. So the idea, as you can see, is to simply jump into these folders and flick them on and off, and so ask yourself if the design looks better with it on and off, and control where you want certain elements to appear through the mask. So looking at this, I can use this mask here, grab a black brush because I want to remove this layer, and I just brush around his shoulders here, and that's all gone. But I think we've got it looking pretty good, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, so background color, you don't really need to play around with that, not unless you want a different background color. You can just double click on that box there and change the color. Now if you want to export your design on a transparent background, it's really simple. All you need to do is turn off the background color and turn off your background layer. So now you have a transparent background. You can save this out as a PNG, drop it onto your other designs, and it's all done. So that's really easy. Okay, so that's really all there is to it. It's a really simple action to use, but it's a lot of fun when you start jumping into these folders and manipulating the layers through the masks, and turn them on and off, just like that. And don't forget to play around with the different styles, and if style 1 doesn't look great, then try a few of the others. That's it. Alright, so if you're stuck anywhere along the way, just send me an email and I'll help you out. But if not, have fun using it. Thanks.